It's IB Nation Sports Talk, and we're up and rolling on this Thursday. Glad to have you with us. He's Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. I see you've got your sweatshirt on. It's a little cooler today than yesterday.
It's like really cold here today. It was cold and rainy. Have the windows open, and it's like pretty frigid.
It's been fairly frigid here. It never rained. The sun's actually out right now, but it's been kind of cloudy and breezy most of the day after it was like really warm and beautiful yesterday. But
43 says the temperature.
Such is spring in the Midwest. What can you do?
Are you going to ask me how I'm doing?
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great because the Cubs are calling up Cade Horton this weekend.
Oh, okay. All right.
Remember, we saw him pitch against Notre Dame in Omaha.
Oh, the
Oklahoma kid.
Oklahoma guy. That's right. That's right.
So he's finally Shota Imanaga had to go to like the 15-day IL, so they're calling him up for the New York Mets series this weekend. He's got like a 1.45 ERA in AAA right now, so pretty excited about it. I've been wanting them to call him up for a while.
CNEP in the chat said 9 years ago today we lost a legend, Greg Bryant Jr., one of his favorite players, gone way too soon. Man, I can't believe it's already been 9 years. I know.
Phew.
Man, what happened? Yeah. So, well, obviously, rest in peace, Greg Bryant. Really, great player, great person as well. Salty is accusing me of deleting a comment. I'm not exactly sure what he's talking about.
Do you even have that
here.
power?
I do not. I don't know how to go about deleting. Well, there is actually a delete comment option, but I've never actually deleted a comment. So I don't know what that's in reference to. Tommy said, Sean, did you delete my comment to Salty? I did not. I did not touch it. I have no idea what you're talking about.
I feel like there's a lot of guilty consciences going on.
I know. Like, what's up? So it's we in, we out day, and that means we answer subscriber questions submitted through the Champions Lounge in we in, we out format on today's show. But what I'm going to do is start off with a non-we in, we out question. It was submitted in the Champions Lounge, and it was submitted by Irish English, and he basically said, I don't know exactly, how to phrase this in we in, we out fashion, but he gave me a list of 5 head coaches in college football, and he wants us to rank them in order of the most punchable faces.
What?
And so I responded that since it wasn't we in, we out, do we need to answer in the form of a question? And he thought that was a great idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the clue. This is my ranking. I'm going to give them to you in the order that I ranked them. And then, you can obviously give your ranking afterwards. I don't want to give it away because I want you to try to guess who they are based on the clue that I think that they'll be fairly easy to get. We'll see. But so I put them in the order that I have them, 1 through 5, of most punchable faces. I'll give you the clue. And then just like Jeopardy, you have to answer it in the form of a question. Are you in or out on that?
I'm in on that.
Okay, here we go. Clue number 1. This coach wins so much, he may own Google stock. If you don't believe him, just ask.
Who is Cignetti?
Yes. Ding, ding, ding. Kirk Cignetti. Off to a rousing start. See, I told you they'd be fairly easy. All right, coach number 2. Some say this coach's personal theme song should be Purple Rain.
Oh, this is a little bit tougher.
This might be the toughest one, but I didn't want to give it away.
Who is Dabo Sweeney?
Yeah.
I'll
give you one more guess. Now think about this. You can say purple in fashion and also
who is Brian Kelly?
In skin color. Yes, Brian Kelly. There you go.
I just thought of Purple Rain because of the orange and purple for Clemson.
Yeah, I didn't think about the purple. I mean, I think more orange with Clemson.
Yeah.
But yeah, they do have purple, obviously, too. Okay, so that's the first 2, Kurt Cignetti and Brian Kelly. Number 3, third base may not be his natural position, but there's a good chance he was born there.
Who is Ryan Day?
Yes. I thought, that was way too easy, I guess. Now, this might be the hardest one to get. This coach began his doggish career as a defensive backs coach at Division II Valdosta State.
It's a good question. Valdosta. I don't even know what Valdosta.
Are you trying to Google?
No.
I heard clicking on the keyboard over there. This coach began his doggish career as defensive backs coach at Division II Valdosta State. Doggish is the key word here.
Doggish.
Come on.
I don't think I'm gonna get it.
All right. We've got 3 people who did. Salty, Josh, and Sabrina. It is Kirby Smart. Doggish, bulldog. Like I said, that was the hardest. Like, I mean, I didn't think that you were gonna know exactly where Kirby Smart began his career. Okay, this is the 5th and final coach on the list of most punchable faces submitted by Irish English. Before he flew the coop, this head coach cut his teeth under Stoops.
Who is Brent Venables?
Right tree.
Oh, who is Lincoln Riley?
There you go. So my ranking goes Curt Cignetti, number 1, Brian Kelly, number 2, Ryan Day, number 3, Kirby Smart, and then Lincoln Riley. Would yours be any different? I just feel like Kurt's like the whole Brian Kelly, Ryan Day, and we can argue about them. But when it comes to just truly punchable looking faces, when you combine it with his personality, that's why I had to put Curt Cignetti at the top of the list.
So my top number 1 would be Ryan Day. Number 2 would be Curt Cignetti. Number 3 would be Brian Kelly. Number 4 would be Lincoln Riley. And number 5 would be Kirby Smart.
Okay. I think, like Lincoln doesn't actually have a very punchable looking face. He's just kind of an ordinary looking dude, He kind of
just
why I put him at the bottom.
He looks like he's, maybe ate a couple gummies or 2 and he's just chilling on the sidelines. He gives me Mike McDaniel vibes is what he gives me.
A little bit. Not quite the same personality.
He's not as nice and as cool and as personable, but just like in terms of like on the sideline, it just always looks like he's just kind of chilling.
Yeah. DJ asks how I don't have Pat Narduzzi. Now, I'll just clarify. I didn't create the list of 5.
The 5 were given to you.
Yeah. He submitted the 5 names, and I had to rank them in order. But Pat Narduzzi is a very good answer. I don't know if I'd put I would put Narduzzi ahead of Smart and Riley both. I'll say that. But I would still have Cignetti at the top of my list if he's going to be on the list. Okay. So now we can get to the actual we in, we out questions. And Irish English has another one here. This was interesting. He says, in or out, Notre Dame tight ends will be under 10% of the rushing/receiving touchdowns for the season. He says, I'll save you some work. In the last 3 seasons, they've been at 11.5%. That's what last year was. 15.7% and 22%. The 22 was in 2022, obviously largely because of Michael Mayer. So it has steadily declined the last couple of years post-Mayer. So will Notre Dame tight ends account for under 10% of the total rushing and receiving touchdowns for Notre Dame this season?
I'm going to be out. I think that Eli Raridan and Bauman are going to have 2 pretty good seasons in terms of touchdown production. I think getting down in the red zone that they could be, them and someone like Malachi Fields are the guys that I'm ultimately thinking of when you get inside the 10-yard line. So, CJ Carr is going to have the ability to kind of get the ball up to him. So, I'm going to go out on this because I think they're going to get closer to 2022 than they are.
Really?
Have been the last.
You think it'll be that high?
Man. I mean, not that high, but I think it'll get up to maybe 12, 13, 14, 15% area. I think it's going to get closer to 20 than it is to 10.
Tight ends had 8 of the 69 total rushing and receiving touchdowns last year, which was the 11.5% that he was talking about. I don't think it's going to be as high as you think. I think it's actually going to be somewhere in between 11.5 and 15.7 there the last 2 years. I think it'll be in the middle of that number rather than closer to the 22%, because like you, like between Bauman and Raritan, I think that there's some good opportunities there. And I mean, those young guys are all, Flanagan, those like really good as well. But I think that because of the fact that you've got Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price and the wide receivers between Fields and Greathouse, I think those 4 are going to account for a pretty heavy percentage of Notre Dame's touchdowns. And, like those tight ends come into play in the red zone. But yeah, I am out on the under. So, but again, I guess that's really my only answer. But I do think that it'll be somewhere between 11.5 and 15.7. Good couple questions there to start us off. Another one from Irish English. In or out on Notre Dame beating Miami 38-17?
Out 38-9.
I'll go in. I actually like this score. I think it's a pretty good score for the season opener. We've got questions, at least, with a new defensive coordinator and that kind of thing. So I think that I don't think that Carson Beck is going to light up the scoreboard. I think they'll score a few points, though, in the opener. So I'll go in on 38-17. I don't think that's a bad pick for sitting here in early May. Fish ND, in or out on the way Joe Rudolph handled the left tackle situation this spring?
Fill me in a little bit. Give me the...
Okay. I'm just going to start off by saying I'm in. I understand that people have a reaction to immediacy, and you think that, it's kind of like a dog. It's like you think what's going on right now is going to last forever, and like as soon as the owner leaves the house, the dog goes nuts because the dog thinks that the owner is never coming back. Like, just because Joe Rudolph kept Charles Jogusah, I've got to say his name the right way, at right guard instead of left tackle all spring, like, doesn't mean that that's going to be the way that, that it's going to happen in the fall. Now, it could be the way it happens in the fall, but let's remember, by playing Jogusah at right guard, you got more looks at him after not really seeing him there until the end of last season because of his injury. So you got a ton of looks of him at right guard. And in the meantime, you got to look at Gerby Lambert and Styles Prescott, both at left tackle, because Anthony Knapp was also out for most of the spring. So, you got different looks for some of those younger guys. You got a lot of looks of Jogusah at right guard. And again, like, just because he does that in the spring, like we've talked about this a lot before, the spring at a very minimum is an opportunity to experiment with some different things. So I'm in on it because again, you got to see a ton of Jogusah at right guard, and you got to see some of those younger guys at left tackle. Just because they did that this spring doesn't mean that it's automatically going to be Knapp at left tackle and Jogusah at right guard, once fall training camp rolls around.
So now that I have the scoop on this, I'm going to be in on this as well. And I think I'm going to echo some of the things that you were saying. I think what people have to realize is it is spring ball, and you are kind of, just conferring around, maybe trying some stuff, seeing what other guys can do, at different positions. But ultimately, here's how I kind of look at it is, and I think this is what Rudolph did last season. You're piecing together an offensive line with the guys that you are given that are healthy. And so dependent on what that group looks like and who's a part of that group that's healthy, it could mean a different configuration of the offensive line.
Correct.
Like Charles Jogusah might be, a really good left tackle, but left tackle might be what specifically one person can do well, but Jogusah can also play guard well. And so to kind of get into the math side of things, you have to look at the combinations and permutations of given a group of 5, 6, 7, 8 guys, and they're all healthy, what gives us the best offensive line across the board? Not what gives us the top left tackle in the country, but what gives us the best unit across the board. So it's
Right.
Rudolph's job throughout the spring and as guys are going through injuries to kind of see where he could maybe plug and place some guys if that, lineup needs to be shuffled around essentially. So I don't mind it because you get a good understanding or baseline of where certain guys could be plugged in if worst case scenario happens.
He has shown each of the last 2 fall training camps that the line that they roll out there, the first team line that they roll out there at the start of camp, has not been the first team line that's finished camp. Now, obviously, last year, part of that had to do with Jagusah, and Tommy says, let's just kill the debate on how his name is said. Let's just call him Charlie Jags. One, there is no debate because I've got this roster that Notre Dame gave us with a pronunciation guide on there, and it says right here, Jagusah. So, I mean, Tommy, you always ride my jock about how I say names. So I'm literally going off the official pronunciation guide. So I don't know how there's another debate on this. But to DJ's point, he says it'll be Knapp. Rudolph forced it last year. He'll do the same. I don't agree that he forced it. Like when you lost Jagusah at left tackle, the options were Anthony Knapp or Tosh Baker. And obviously, they felt like Anthony Knapp was the way to go. And there were plenty of people who were concerned that it was going to be Tosh Baker. Like no one wanted it. Like very few people wanted to see Tosh Baker out there at left tackle. And again, like when you look at the mentality that Marcus Freeman / Joe Rudolph had with that decision, having the confidence to go with a true freshman starting at an important position like left tackle, as opposed to a veteran who had been in the program for 5+ years, like Baker, like you can see where, like Freeman has the confidence to go with one of these 2 so far unproven quarterbacks coming into this season in a road situation. But I don't think he forced it. I don't think he forced it because the options were just so limited last year with who was a true viable option. So I don't think he forced it. There was just no other place to go as a result with what you were left with after the injury to Jags.
I like Jasquatch.
You like the Jasquatch?
Yeah.
It's not a bad one. I don't know how he'd feel about it, though. From Joe, in or out, USC will use the announcement of the Notre Dame Clemson agreement as a way of getting out of playing Notre Dame every year, mostly because they're tired of being whooped up on. In or out on that?
I think they'll use it as ammunition. I think they're, this is all just opinion, but it feels like USC is just kind of compiling this case for why they want to exit out of this rivalry. I hope I'm wrong, but I feel like it's kind of where things are headed. They're in the Big Ten. They already don't like making travels to the Midwest when it's cold and late in the year. And so when you're in the Big Ten,
even though they had no problem taking the money to join the Big Ten, but yeah.
So, the excuse is going to be, well, we already have to travel enough and play in these, climates that we don't want to. Why would we add Notre Dame, an already hard, out of schedule opponent? They don't have to play in a conference. We have to play in a conference, yada, yada, yada. It just feels like it's all kind of adding up. And I don't think that, or I do think that this would also be kind of brought to the table. Well, you just signed a 10-year contract with Clemson. What do you need us for? Like you've already kind of, and I know it's going to be still counted as part of kind of like their ACC quota. So I don't know. There's just so much history and legacy there. It would be really sad if USC does decide to do that.
No, it would. It would stink quite a bit. Joe says they never should have joined that. I mean, I don't think anyone on this side disagrees with that, but like athletic departments are hemorrhaging money. They've been hemorrhaging money, and USC and UCLA both needed a big paycheck, and they took it. I mean, obviously, if they had stayed put, then, college football would look a lot different right now. The Pac-12 would literally still exist if USC and UCLA had stayed put and not bolted. Colorado wouldn't be back in the Big 12. Arizona and Arizona State wouldn't be in the Big 12. It'd look a lot different. So, I mean, I guess I'm out because I don't think that USC is using it, as an excuse as much as Notre Dame is using this as an insurance policy because it like the trend feels like USC is going to back out of this. So it's more like, Notre Dame coming up with being proactive and finding an early solution in case it does come to this, which it does seem like signs are pointing to that. Now, the other one from Joe, the Notre Dame Clemson agreement could come back to bite both teams in the rear by keeping them out of playoff contention with a loss to the other team. You in or out on that one?
I'm going to be out on this one because I think we're trending towards, with these kind of big Power Four conferences, you're trending towards kind of more beefed up schedules. I don't think a singular loss, on either side is potentially what's going to keep them out. When you start to get into that 2-loss range, that's, I think, where it's going to get a little bit hairy. And, we've seen potentially some 3-loss teams who are going to get in. But again, that goes back to just because we're seeing beefier schedules with these Power Four. And I think that's going to continue to be a trend. I mean, look at Notre Dame's kind of upcoming schedules over the next couple, years, that they're going to have some multiple big names on the schedule. And so I think that's the way things are trending. And so I think you could, obviously you don't want multiple losses, but you could get away with definitely 1, 2 losses. 3 losses is when you really start to get into, okay, we would be a bubble team at best, I think.
I mean, like when you've got Alabama and Clemson and Florida State and Florida, and Michigan, there's I'm trying to find the season. It might be 20.
You got Arkansas, Texas, Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in because, could come back to bite both teams. Yeah, I'll just be in because, it's the both that has me kind of on the fence on this.
I feel like you're pulling to me right now.
No, I know, because I think it could. I think for the couple of years where Notre Dame's schedule gets pretty stacked, and Vince and I talked about them the other day, where there's a year where it's like Clemson and Michigan and Texas all on the schedule. Like that year, it could definitely. Okay, so Joe now is saying one or the other, so I'll definitely be in on that. I do think that it could. Now, to the point of just losing, Notre Dame just losing to Clemson or Clemson just losing to Notre Dame. No, I don't think that that's going to push either one of them out of the college football playoff. But because, like, when you look at Notre Dame's schedule in a couple of those years where it is pretty loaded, it could come back to bite Notre Dame as like you scheduled one too many, big marquee games for that year. So that's why I'm in.
So you're assuming that they're going to lose all of them. I'm assuming they're going to win all of them.
Well, I mean, one, we're projecting like how many years down the road? But, so let's see. Josh said the 29 schedule. Yeah, they've got Alabama. They're at Clemson. They've also got Florida State. That one's not. Oh, there it is. Texas. They've got Texas that year as well. So they're at Texas. They've got Alabama, and they've got Florida State, and they're at Clemson. That is not an easy slate by any stretch. There was one other year where they've got a combination with Michigan in there that I still can't find here. I'm going to click one more year. There it is. And 2033, it's Michigan and Clemson. 2034, Michigan, Miami, Clemson. And again, it's like, which is not brutal, but like Miami, you just kind of don't know year to year. Miami and Florida State both, what exactly you're going to get. There's still There's still a lot, I think, that's got to be proven with the Hurricanes. 13 reasons why. USC versus Notre Dame on October 18th. Both teams will be undefeated before the game, and Notre Dame will still be undefeated after the game. I'm sure you haven't looked at USC's schedule yet. I'm going to be out on this because here's what USC's schedule looks like the 3 weeks prior, the 3 games, and 3 games prior to playing Notre Dame. Michigan State, at Illinois, Michigan. So I am out on USC being undefeated going into the Notre Dame USC game. I am in on Notre Dame still being undefeated after the Notre Dame USC game.
They'll beat Missouri State. They'll beat Georgia Southern. And side note, extremely tough out-of-conference schedule there, USC. Missouri State and Georgia Southern to start your season. And then it goes Purdue, Michigan State, Illinois, Michigan. I think they'll win all the games, and I'm 50-50 on Michigan, USC. I just don't know how tough USC is really going to be in the trenches. Like, they have a ton of skill positions.
The answer is not.
The
they will not be tough in the trenches this year.
And I know Michigan will be tough in the trenches.
Yeah.
And
look, Illinois is a good team as well. Like, I think they're going to lose at least one of those 3 games. Michigan State's going to be better this year. Michigan State, Illinois, Michigan. They'll lose at least 1, if not 2 of those games, I think, coming in.
USC kind of has an easy schedule this year. I mean, kind of. You got Oregon, Notre Dame, and Michigan as some.
And then they go to Nebraska afterwards, and they also have Iowa and Oregon. I don't think they've got an easy schedule by any means. That might be one we might need to do their over/under tomorrow.
So to answer the question, finally, I'm going to be in on this. I think USC is going to squeak out Michigan and be undefeated going into this game. So,
Double or nothing on that bet you still owe me?
No, you should cash in this weekend while you're just by yourself at the house.
I should.
Let me know what kind of pizza you want. I'll call it in.
Let's do it.
I won some good money last night. Finally so we won't get too distracted, but the Tigers the Tigers and the Rockies. The Rockies are just horrible. They have like 6 wins, and they got up 3-0. And the Tigers' money line jumped to like plus 300. And I was like, there's no way that they don't come back and win this game. The Rockies are horrible. And I put $150 on it and won $450, but it took going to 11 innings and staying up till midnight last night. So got sweaty, but we made it.
Andrew says Nebraska's a dark horse playoff team. Raiola is legit. Rule has huge year 3.
Yeah, they'll be way tougher than USC.
Yeah.
They have enough skill to get past USC, though.
And that's, but look at that stretch. Michigan State, again, I know like Michigan State, but in a head-to-head with USC, I'm not just saying USC.
Well, that guy has experience because he's coming from the Pac-12 and Oregon State against Lincoln.
But listen to this 5-game stretch that starts September 20th for USC. Michigan State, at Illinois, Michigan, at Notre Dame, at Nebraska.
It's going to be a lot of physical football for a team that's not very physical.
And then after Nebraska, they have Northwestern. Then it goes Iowa and Oregon before they finish with UCLA. I see a lot of losses on that schedule. That's what I see.
Are you telling me we need to do their schedule at some point this offseason?
By the way, happy birthday, Brian NY. I just saw everybody, Joe wishing him a happy birthday. Just saw that. Hope you're having a good one out there. Thanks for celebrating with us for at least a little while anyway. 13 reasons why. The Big Ten told Lincoln Riley to say USC versus Notre Dame rivalry is in jeopardy as a way to try and force Notre Dame to join the Big Ten. Big conspiracy theory here.
I'm out on this one. I think that there's better ammunition to use than this.
I'm out, but I like it as a nice juicy conspiracy. That's actually a pretty good one. From Irish English, Vinny Freeman could beat up Lincoln Riley and Kurt Signetti at a fight at the same time. Are we in or we out on this? I mean, I think Irish English, our friend from Central Kansas down there, so close to my old stomping grounds in the middle of Kansas, I think that he's setting up his own fight club down there with all the who's got the most smashable faces and, wanting Vinny Freeman to fight Lincoln Riley and Kurt Signetti. What do you think about this one?
Oh, I'm in on this one. Vinny Freeman could just literally run, what is it, like takedowns for $1 or whatever. He could just take him down and then just go to the next guy, take him down, go to the next guy.
That's what I was going to say. Maybe not straight up fist fight, but like if you put, like if you did a cage match and you put the three of them in there and it's all like who can come up with the most takedowns in 2 or 3 minutes, I would put a lot of money on Vinny Freeman on that.
So a couple things. A wrestler can still suplex the hell out of you, and that would not feel good. I'll tell you that. And number two, I saw this thing the other day of UFC fighters, because UFC fighters come from all different backgrounds, wrestling, boxing. The guys with the most success come from high pedigree wrestling backgrounds.
Makes sense.
So
Makes sense.
I guess what I'm getting at is wrestlers are the best, just kind of fighters, street fighters, I guess you could say.
And I mean, look, theoretically, let's say I ever got into any fights, like back in my time, theoretically, like the first thing theoretically that a wrestler would do is just take you to the ground and,
body control.
That's right. Not let you get any punches in, theoretically.
Can't get punched if a punch can't be thrown.
That's exactly right.
How about the wrist control?
DJ says this thread was started by Sean the day of the show, which means Salty Virginia Peanuts dropped the ball. Are we in or we out on that? I'll go in, even though Salty never actually posts our thread for this. He does the buy, sell, hold thread for Bryant, but he does not
Salty. It's like that, I guess. I'm in on this because Salty causes the most problems on this show.
DJ says, in or out, Marcus Freeman and staff should be considered one of the best in the country when it comes to the transfer portal.
I'm going to be in on this because they only go to the portal for what they need and their fits. Like the guys, they come out of the portal and it's an immediate fit and there's so much transparency to what their role is going to be and how it's going to. It's like when I start thinking about last year, when I don't know why I can't think of his name right now. He came from Arizona State, Jordan Clark.
Yeah.
When Jordan Clark came here, I'm pretty sure they interviewed him. They were like, yeah, first conversation we had, they were already telling me, how I fit into the scheme and what they expect out of me and, where I would fit. Like, I think they're so good at that when these guys get here, there's no dropped ball in terms of expectations. These guys are going to do or fit into the role that they were told. So I think they're just really good at getting talent and assessing talent that is good for what they're trying to do in their grand scheme.
Because with the portal, you can't wait until December when the portal opens to start evaluating these guys. You have to be identifying over the course of the year, okay, here are guys who fit the criteria of someone who, it might be draft eligible, but more likely than not, he's going to stay in school for another year because he's not going to go, very high, if at all, in the NFL draft, and like they've been very good at that. And they've obviously plugged key strategic holes in the roster. And that's why, again, like, does the wide receiver recruiting need to continue to get better? Sure it does. But in the meantime, just look at the last 2 years, how they've been able to go out and find veteran wide receivers, and look at the way everybody's talking about Malachi Fields right now. And they've been able to plug those immediate needs as they, continue to get there. In the meantime, to your point, like you talk about the secondary, like safety is a place that they've gone a few times over the years, and they did it again this year, but they've probably gotten to a place with safety that they don't need to. Nickel, like you said, with Jordan Clark, is like nickel specifically has been an area that they have addressed with the portal, and they've done very well with it. Like look at what they got out of Thomas Harper a few years back, and the fact that Harper never even got drafted and how well he played after they got him over here from Oklahoma State. So they've really done well there, and obviously at quarterback as well. So absolutely in on that one. All right, a few from DK.
He's not here. We can just skip these.
Oh, okay. Navy at 11-1 will be the Group of 5 representative in the playoffs. In or out?
Out. It's gonna be
not at 11-1.
So hard for a team like Navy to get in, and they just have to operate at such a high, almost perfect level. I'm rooting for him, but I'm just gonna be out. Oh, there he is. DK has into the chat.
I'm out just because I don't think that one loss is going to be enough because you're Navy. Like if you're a service academy, you're going to have to run the table to get there, even if the loss is to Notre Dame. Obviously, it's just like look at what those losses to Notre Dame did to both Army and Navy last year. They just knocked them, just a few pegs down, and it's like, well, they were nice stories, service academies, all that kind of stuff. But you obviously can't contend with the big boys when it's all said and done. And so if Notre Dame plasters them like they did this year, there's no way. In or out that Steve Angeli will be drafted before CJ Carr or Kenny Minchie?
This is a huge out for me. I keep doubling down, but I don't care. Steve Angeli won't even start at Syracuse this season.
Ooh. Okay, well, as you said, you keep doubling down. You've already been wrong once about even what
oh my gosh
that he would end
just
up at.
Because his high school coach was at Syracuse and he thinks he's going to be a starter when he's just going to be on the bench. Listen, I don't have time to go into this argument. If Steve Angeli really wanted to be a starter, he wouldn't have went the P4 route. He's going to sit somewhere.
I'm out because Steve Angeli has 2 years of eligibility left. CJ Carr, if he does what we think that he's going to do, will have this year and then 2026, which means they will both be entries in the 2027 NFL draft, which means CJ Carr will be drafted before Steve Angeli. So I have to be out on that. Pizza is acceptable to be eaten with ranch dressing. Where do you stand on this?
Huge in on this. This is I am notorious. I love to dip fries in ranch. I'll definitely dip the pizza crust in ranch. The thing is like good pizza, like really, really good pizza, I try to stay away from it. But when you get into like Domino's or like Pizza Hut, like you need a little bit of dipping sauce to kind of get through it at times.
I agree with that.
I really like ranch. I'll even dip, like we have Hacienda in South Bend. So like a big thing there is dipping your tortilla chips in ranch. I'm a big proponent of like ranch and Heinz 57 are probably my top 2 favorite condiments.
Yeah, I don't do it very often, but there are times where it's just like you're saying, if you're getting a cheaper pizza that's not so great, you got that crust. I do like eating the crust, but needs a little help, a little pick me up and a little ranch every now and then. It's not a bad way to go. Crust specifically, but like the rest of it, Joe says runny or thick ranch. I mean, personally, I like a thicker ranch, but I mean, if we're dipping cheap pizzas in it, we're probably not going to be able to be too picky with what kind of ranch that we get, is my guess.
It doesn't matter for me.
All right, here's one for you. This last one I think is a little more challenging. Top 6 wide receiver rotation for Notre Dame will be Malachi Fields, Will Pauling, Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, Micah Gilbert, and Cam Williams.
You go first real quick. Okay,
so I meant to have my numbers here.
See, the thing is you always get the chance to peek at these questions a little bit, so you're a little bit more prepared with ammunition.
Yeah, I mean, part of the job, right? I just think that those last 2 spots are going to be won during fall camp. And I think that Gilbert's going to be in that mix. Williams should be in that mix. I think KK Smith is going to be in that mix.
Elijah Burris.
I think Elijah Burris is going to be in that mix.
What about Saudate?
That's another good one. I think that I would put in that mix. That gives you 5 guys battling for those last 2 spots. And we didn't get to see enough of Gilbert this spring because of the finger injury and what we saw of Cam Williams. You just got to be more consistent. That's what it comes down to. So I'm going to be out because I think with that many guys battling for those 2 jobs, I think that there's just too many guys who are going to be in the mix. So I'm going to be out on that.
I'm out. I'll do a little bit more than you. I like Fields. I like Pauling. I like maybe Greathouse makes it. I don't know. Faison will make it. The last 2, I'm gonna go with KK Smith and Elijah Burris as the guys who get those last 2 spots.
Okay.
I think that Elijah Burris had a tremendous spring. And I think Notre Dame has shown that they don't care if you're talented and you're a freshman. We don't care. We'll get you on the field. And I just think he's going to continue to kind of just skyrocket, to be honest with you. So, and I like his kind of the skills that he brings to the table to that wide receiver room. So I'm going to go with Burris and KK.
And I agree with Andrew. We saw Jeremiah Love continuing to rep more at wide receiver this spring, and it just feels like, he says, and Andrew is saying, I bet we see Love spread out as a wide receiver this year. I just think that makes a lot of sense. And I was thinking about it, like we've talked about, and hope for more 21 personnel, but like if you could have both Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love on the field, like if your 21 package is your third down package, and then you can basically do a lot of different things with both Price and Love, but especially Love, with the ability to flex him out and do some of that different stuff. And as I've said, like that gets your best offensive weapon on the field on third down. But if he's out there, in the slot or a wide receiver or wherever you put him, then that's also going to save some hits on him potentially that he takes, by having him out there. So he's on the field, but he's not necessarily taking all that extra pounding because of the extra reps that he's taken. DJ, Georgia Tech's win total at 7.5 is too low. In or out on that?
Georgia Tech football schedule 2025. Scott's critiquing me in the chat because I don't come prepared, apparently. Thanks, Scott. So, first game, Colorado, win. Second game, Gardner-Webb, win. Third game, Clemson, loss.
It's a loss.
Fourth game, Temple, win.
It's a win.
Fifth game, Wake Forest.
That's a win.
Close win. Next game, Virginia Tech. I'll go with the loss on that one. Okay. Duke, I think they win, so you're at 6. Syracuse, I'll go loss. So you're at 6-3. North
NC
Carolina State win. Boston College
loss.
And then I think you win Pittsburgh and you lose to Georgia. So what is that, like 7-5 at the end of the day?
So I think that 7.5 is actually right on.
Yeah. So good line, DJ, and I'll go under.
I'll go under as well. Yeah. DJ, not happy with ketchup. He says, in or out, ketchup is an abomination created by adding sugar and vinegar to tomato sauce.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of ketchup, and honestly, I stay away from it because of all the sugar in it. It's way too sweet. You
can buy low sugar ketchup these days.
Yeah, but
Heinz makes it.
I just said, though, that like I would much rather have ranch than ketchup for all things, to dip my fries in, to put on a cheeseburger, whatever it might be. So yeah, and Heinz 57, which has like no carbs and no sugar and just tastes better than ketchup. So
Look, I like ketchup mostly with fries. I actually like it, like if I'm air frying some chicken tenders, that's when I go for the ketchup. I like a little hot sauce on the tender and then still a little ketchup to provide a little zing. So, and I do like it on my burgers as well. So I don't go crazy with ketchup, but I like it on, like those basic things like a burger and, so, like some chicken tenders, that kind of stuff, and some fries. That's it.
I think the only thing I put ketchup on consistently is hot dogs and cheeseburgers, and that's literally it.
Not bad. DJ doesn't think that Georgia Tech's going to lose to both Syracuse and BC. I could see him splitting. I mean, like their schedule is definitely very manageable when you have Wake Forest, Virginia Tech, Duke, Syracuse, NC. I mean, really, Clemson and Georgia. And they do play Colorado as well. I think that's going to be a toss-up game. Did you even mention the Colorado game at the start of the season?
First game of the year.
So, like, really, you've got Clemson and Georgia as, I would say, two definite L's. Everything else is a possibility. But because of the fact that they're Georgia Tech, I think that's why the over-under is 7.5 and probably not a little bit higher, just because they haven't proven that they can go out and, be a 9-game winner. So I think that the line of 7.5 is definitely more tempting. And I think that you're going to tempt a lot of people to bet the over, but they just might be under when it's all said and done. I would agree.
You didn't respond to my freaking screenshot today, by the way. I sent you a screenshot. I said, this looks super manageable. And then you just send me a link to the freaking show. No
I was an airport shuttle today. I was a doctor's office shuttle today. So I had things going on. Couldn't just respond to all your random screenshots. Jesse with his over-under on the Cowboys. We can save that conversation for a little bit later.
For Friday.
In or out on Drake Bowen being Notre Dame's leading tackler? I'm definitely in on this.
In. He will be the primary linebacker. The thing is he has no, in my opinion, he's not vulnerable in passing situations. He can cover guys out of the backfield. He's got tremendous speed and athleticism to close on the sidelines. So there's not a situation where I feel like Notre Dame is at a disadvantage with Drake Bowen on the field. Like if they went nickel or had to go dime, I would still feel comfortable with Bowen being on the field.
I don't disagree with that. Another one from DJ. In or out, the starting quarterback for Notre Dame will have 60 to 70 rushing attempts. This is an interesting one because Riley Leonard had 184 last year.
Did he really?
Oh, yeah. I didn't realize it was that high.
I guess you got to factor in the playoffs as well, but my goodness.
Right. Yeah. That's a lot of rushing
over
attempts.
10 a game.
Yeah. So, like, if it's 5 per game, that gets you to 60 right there. And sacks obviously count as a rushing attempt as well. So I'm going to be in on this because I think that they'll probably give up somewhere, around 30-ish sacks probably this season, with a more, with a guy who doesn't run like Riley Leonard.
Let's take out sacks. Like I want designed run plays for your quarterback.
Unfortunately, like NCAA stats don't take out, so at the end of the season, whatever the sacks are, they're still going to be included in the rushing attempts.
Looking at this.
I see what you're saying. So like true rushing attempts, do you think that the quarterback gets to 60?
No, I'm out. I think they're going to protect CJ Carr to a degree. And knowing that his arm is his weapon. I think he'll be able to use his legs to manage the pocket, get out of the pocket, extend some plays. But I don't see a lot of true designed run attempts. And I don't see it getting over 60 or 70.
I don't know if they'll be true design, but there's going to be some RPO and stuff like that in there. And somebody says that where did it go? I am Tenzin. I am the son of Aang. He says, no trust in the offensive line. Sheesh. 30 sacks. They gave up 25 sacks last year with Riley
And Riley
Leonard.
Leonard dodged a lot of sacks last
Yeah.
year.
If they gave up 25 with Riley Leonard, even with the offensive line being better, with a more traditional quarterback, I think 30. Now, obviously, 25 is over the course of 16 games, and we don't know how many games this is going to end up being. But even 30, that's what 2 point what in a 12-game schedule. Or
2.5.
Yeah, like a 13-game schedule, even factoring in, one playoff game or one bowl game. So, I mean, that's like for a college season, 30 sacks is about average. So that's why I say, they're probably going to give up somewhere around the oh, fair point. And Jelly helped that number as well. Very fair point.
He sure did.
Very fair point. 2 in the biggest drive of his life. Oh, to celebrate finally learning how to post a GIF on the message boards using GIFs. Is it GIF or GIF? I still don't know how to say it.
I don't know. I
know. Everybody says it different. Using GIFs and memes to communicate is one of the greatest advancements in human interaction since You've Got Mail. We in or we out on that from Domer Grizz. Domer Grizz, if you're here, I'd like you to put the year of your birth in the chat right now so we can see just how much of a true accomplishment that was. I'll go in on that though. I don't use them a lot. I use them sparingly.
I am in on this because I love to send them, especially instead of sending like a yes or an okay or like. I think it's really fun to do that. I think emojis, for all my iPhone users out there, I think emojis are a lot of fun. And now they've done it too, where like you can create stickers out of pictures, and so you can like basically create your own emojis. Like, I think it's great. And then to me, this is even more important in the work setting. I think this invention is tremendous for the work setting because I love to send people like the thumbs up emoji or like a meme and group chats. So like work setting, I think it's top notch.
I am Tenzin says in for the boards, out elsewhere. I think that's fair. You could go with that.
How did I know that Tommy was an Android user?
Tommy's just cutting against the grain, baby. All right, let's see. In or out at the end of the season, the Notre Dame Clemson series market. Oh, we're going to answer this in rapid fire. We've actually got a rapid fire question very similar to that. In or out, Anthony Knapp is an interior player, so playing him out of position at left tackle in college will hurt his NFL draft potential because there will be no film of him playing a position that he's projected to play as a pro. In or out?
I'm out on this. A lot of guys get drafted after playing an entire position in college and go on to play a completely different position in the NFL. So you either got the talent or not. And the NFL evaluators, scouts are good about kind of, determining that and seeing if you could be a fit at a different position, for what they got going on. So to me, this is kind of like similar to the conversation of, do you limit your kids to play one sport? No, you want them to be athletic and as versatile as possible. So that's kind of the way I view it for offensive linemen in particular. Is the more you can do and the more versatility you can show, I think it's honestly better because then you can like say a team has a franchise left tackle and you played left tackle your whole career, but you could go on and just play guard next to him, and now you got two studs right next to each other.
Yeah, if you're athletic enough to play left tackle in college and you show that you're obviously have the physical enough traits, they'll feel confident enough to move you inside to play a guard position in the NFL. Just like I said, Zach Martin. And like baseball, the comp is shortstops. Like if you can play shortstop at whatever level, you can play just about any other position on the field, maybe except catcher or pitcher, just depending on your ability. But, unless you're Buster Posey. But yeah, I mean, like, you recruit like Maneri used to recruit shortstops out of high school, and then he literally had an infield of 4 guys, third base, shortstop, second base, first base, who were all, high school shortstops playing different positions in college, and some even, like ended up in the outfield. So I think if you're good enough it'll show through, and NFL guys will feel like, they can, that ultimately fits once you get to that level. Mookie Betts as well. Yep, another
That
good
man's
one.
played
Andrew.
shortstop, second base, center field, like
right.
all of the premier positions in the MLB.
All right, we're coming down. We might have a couple late ads here today. Ooh, stinger. This is a tough one. In or out, Rocco Spindler was a big loss.
I don't know about a big loss, but he's a loss. Definitely a guy that provides a lot of veteran experience. He's a tough guy. But let me just put it like this. There's more talent in the room. It's just, unfortunately, Rocco Spindler had played a lot of games. He's a Notre Dame guy. And to me, he's just tough as nails. Like, I Rocco Spindler could play on my team any day of the week just because of his toughness.
Yeah, I mean, like if you look at, like, maybe as Tommy's alluding to, literally a big loss because he's a big dude. Like, but look, if Rocco Spindler is gone and Charles Jagisaw ends up playing right guard, is it that much of a? And I may have been saying left guard earlier, I can't remember, but obviously Jagisaw played right guard predominantly this spring. But if like if that's your replacement at right guard with Spindler leaving and you end up with Jagisaw there, I mean, you're feeling pretty good, right? Like even if Jagisaw moves out and it ends up being Sullivan Absher at right guard, I think you'd probably be feeling pretty good about that. With just all these young studs that they've got in the pipeline over there, I just like, there are very few guys who and like any of those three transfers, I don't think any of them from a pure, playing production standpoint is going to be considered a considerable loss for this team because of the guys who are going to be taking their spots this year in the starting positions. So I'm out on that.
Oh no.
Salty. Best home game atmosphere ever at Notre Dame last season was playoff game against Indiana. You froze yourself out there. What do you think?
By far the best game I've ever been to. Just environment. I love the nighttime games. I didn't mind that it was cold. Like that's what it felt like. Playing a football game in December in South Bend, it should be cold. And the thing is that was the first ever playoff game to be hosted on a home campus. It was arguably Notre Dame's biggest win in the last 30 years. I think when you put everything together and the way that they kind of just, and in all regards, they dominated that game too. Like,
right.
like that was a butt whooping the entire time. And so watching Indiana literally be able to do nothing after Signetti flapped his gums all week and all pregame and came out to college game day before the show and left his guys hanging in the locker room. Like, you put all that together, it is by far probably one of the most fun sporting events I've been to all time.
It's got to be in because there were just too many people. There have been a lot of great home game atmospheres over the years, but really, as they've kind of tweaked this formula with all the different things that they've done between adding the second press box, which kind of helps that sound stay in the stadium a little bit more, and adding the video board there on the south side of the stadium as well. All that helps keep that sound in a little bit more. And then you've got the night game atmosphere, the fact that it was a playoff game. There were just so many people, like neutral media, national media type people who came in and experienced that atmosphere, who felt like not only was it maybe the best atmosphere in Notre Dame Stadium, but it was one of the greatest college football atmospheres they've said they've ever experienced. So I've got to go in. And I agree. Ohio State was electric as well. There was some great atmosphere there. It definitely helps that they beat Indiana to kind of carry that feeling over, because I think Andrew also said like 05 Notre Dame USC, and that was some great atmosphere as well. But I mean, it's literally been 20 years. So,
And like Salty
Alabama
said,
Jones.
He gave us some Alabama Jones.
That's right.
Speaking of Alabama Jones, I listened to. Have you ever heard of Theo Vaughn? He's a comedian.
I have.
He had he had Lane Kiffin on his podcast the other day.
Really?
Yeah, and it's just I like Lane Kiffin, and Theo Vaughn is someone who I think is pretty funny most of the time, and so I was like, I should just give this a listen. And listening to Lane Kiffin talk about Alabama Jones was pretty insightful. Just some of the stories that he was talking about. Basically,
He didn't actually call him Alabama Jones, did he?
No,
Okay.
no. It's funny. A lot of people, I think in the circle, like Kiffin just kept referring to him as coach. Like not even Nick or Coach Saban or just coach. So
I can see that. Like you can tell that he's still got a lot of respect for him.
He does have a lot of respect. And in that kind of interview that they did, he really was talking about, his life was on the downward spiral between, the Raiders, USC, and Nick Saban allowed him to kind of, land at Alabama and really get back on his feet. So,
yep.
Good interview. If you've got like an hour and a half and want to laugh and also, learn a little bit more about football and Lane Kiffin, it was pretty good.
I'll have to check it out.
I took your advice. I'm listening to podcasts these days to slow myself, to become more zen. Become more zen.
That's right. Jesse, if you really want to get more zen, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it.
All right. So we've got a lot to get to in rapid fire today, as always. With roster limits coming soon to college football, Notre Dame Athletic Director Pete Bavacqua is committed to honoring the roster spots for every current football player at Notre Dame. Bavacqua told Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports the Irish will also allow those who were cut to return to their respective teams. The announcement comes a day after the NCAA and Power Conferences made changes to the proposed House settlement. It would let schools grandfather in players who are currently on the roster, as well as players who've already been cut from the team, and high school recruits who enrolled at a school after committing to a roster position only to see it eliminated. So the amendment to the House settlement has not yet been approved, which makes Notre Dame the first school to publicly commit to fully grandfathering in current athletes amid upcoming roster limits, which of course are going to be set at 105. So what do you think of all this that Pete Bavacqua was doing here at Notre Dame?
So let me get this straight. Basically, so to me, there's like three situations. If you're a high school kid that committed and they basically said, we don't have the roster space, you could still now come back.
Correct.
Number two, if you've already been cut, you can come back.
Correct.
And number three, if you were on the team and there's the potential of being cut, you're basically being guaranteed that you're not going to get cut.
Correct again. Correctamundo.
Okay. Not often I go 3 for 3, especially after reading something. So what I think of all this, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, especially when Notre Dame is kind of going to be, on the frontier of this and be kind of the first program to necessarily say, we're all going to let you stay. But at the end of the day, I don't think it can be anything but great or bad or good on behalf of Notre Dame, on behalf of Notre Dame, because you're basically setting the precedent of, we're going to honor our word and our commitment at the end of the day, and not screw you over at the end of the day, not take away kind of your dream or this opportunity that you did earn, but now through the kind of transition of all these new rules that are coming about, you're not going to be the one to catch the short end of the stick, basically. And so
yeah,
I think it's really good on Notre Dame's behalf to kind of honor their word at the end of the day. And that's just kind of, initial thoughts, I guess.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, I don't think I mentioned this, but this revision that they talked about, that they made to the House settlement yesterday, it permits schools to grandfather in student athletes. It does not require schools to grandfather in student athletes. So even if the grandfathering in, even if the House settlement is finally approved by the judge out there in California, even if it's finally approved, like it just allows schools basically to make the choice. It's still not going to force schools to have to grandfather them in. So for Notre Dame to be out front in this, I think is awesome. And the fact that that Pete Bavacqua came out and said, "Look, we're going to do it. We're going to honor this. We're backing up what we told a player that he was going to have when he came here. We're not just going to leave him hanging out there." And I mean, really, it's not a lot different than what their philosophy has been, leading up to this, because
it's not all about football.
Well, yeah, scholarships, like scholarships have always been, like it has to be renewed every year, so a school could pull a scholarship from a guy if they decide that, he's fourth string on the depth chart and they didn't want to honor it anymore. School could pull that. And, like the guy would be hanging, like I think Dion did that to some guys when he came in at Colorado that first year. He just kind of, yanked the rug out from underneath some of those guys. But like what Notre Dame has always done, every year when people start wringing their hands a little bit about, the roster, we're at 89 players, how are we going to get to 85 and all that kind of stuff? And then a couple guys medically retire. Well, like those guys are, like Notre Dame still honors the scholarship. They've still, honored everything that they told them they were going to have, even if they say, hey, look, we're not going to be able to keep you on the roster because we've got to get to 85, whether it's medical retirements or, they just decide, hey, you're like deep on the depth chart. So you're not going to be able to, to stay on the roster, but they do allow them to stay in school, and they do, continue to honor the scholarship that they gave them before they came here. So it's really, it's not much different from what Notre Dame has already done, but I do think it's very significant that Pete Bavacqua is getting out in front of this and kind of giving some other schools the opportunity to kind of follow the lead of Notre Dame and be able to step up and honor themselves as well. Because again, they're not required to grandfather these players in, but they are allowed to do it. So I think it's great that Notre Dame is doing that. So the Notre Dame Clemson scheduling agreement runs through 2037. Scale of 1 to 10. What chances do you give both Marcus Freeman and Dabo Swinney to still be at their schools when this contract ends?
A 2 out of 10.
Okay.
I think maybe a fun spin on this is, who do you think has a better chance to be there in 2037, Dabo Swinney or Marcus Freeman? This one's hard for me. I guess I'll kind of give you a little insight on my thought process.
Okay.
Dabo Swinney, I think, kind of has a lifetime contract at Clemson, as long as he's not like 6-6 every year, or if he's like 8-4 and above every third or fourth year and predominantly stays around that 9-10 win average. I think he's a guy that, he's won national championships. I just think he's one of those guys that Clemson would kind of hold on to as long as possible. Even though the fans think one thing, I think the administration is very pleased with Dabo Swinney at the end of the day.
But that's still now. And like, it's crazy. Dabo is 55. He's already going into his 18th season.
That's what I mean.
Coach at Clemson. Marcus Freeman's 39. He would be 53, 14 years from now when this contract ends. So, again, like Dabo would be 3 decades in at this point if he makes it to the end of this deal. And, he would be pushing 70 years old at that point. I just think that is a long time for anyone. 2037, DJ, is when this goes to. Because like Kirk Ferentz right now is the longest tenured college football coach, 26 years. He's going into his 26th year. Gundy at Oklahoma State and Kyle Whittingham at Utah are going on their 21st seasons. And it's kind of amazing. Kyle Whittingham took over at Utah when Urban Meyer left to go to Florida, and Whittingham is still there at Utah 2+ decades later. I think that's kind of crazy. So but nobody else is even at 20 years. It's those 3 guys. And so, again, Dabo would be going over 30 years, 14, actually it would be, 14 years from now. And Marcus Freeman would be 17+ years at that point. So I got to put this at a 1. I just you just don't see, like Brian Kelly made it 12 years, Newt Rockne, 13 years in a completely different era. It's just like, like for Notre Dame specifically, being the Notre Dame football coach is like being the president. It ages you differently because of all the things that you have to keep up with. I feel like Marcus Freeman is either in the NFL or he's an athletic director someplace that many years from now.
So and that's kind of for Marcus Freeman. My argument would be, I think he's gonna get into some nice success here. I think he's gonna get a national championship done at Notre Dame, if we're being honest. And I think that's gonna kind of start a poaching situation of maybe the NFL or kind of stuff you were talking about. So that's what I'm more concerned about with him. And I think DJ brings up a really good point too. I see Dabo following that Greg Popovich, Brad Stevens type situation where you coach forever and then you go on up into the administration level. So
and it's kind of a Southern, those SEC schools, like Skip Bertman retired after, a Hall of Fame career as LSU baseball coach and became the athletic director at LSU for a few years. Ray Tanner won a couple of national championships as the South Carolina baseball coach. He became athletic director. Cohen at Mississippi State did the same thing. Interesting that the baseball coaches got those gigs, but that's kind of a Southern thing where like you get promoted, you kind of move up the food chain and you get out of coaching and you become the athletic director at their school. I could definitely see that for a guy like Dabo down there at Clemson. And then he ends up ultimately hiring the next coach down there. I agree, Tommy. You really can't count Newt, but at the same time, it was 13 years. Like I said, a completely different era. 100 plus years ago at this point.
This just reminded me of something. All this talk about Saban and the NFL. When I was listening to that podcast last night, Lane Kiffin said that he believes Saban will end up in the NFL. Actually,
I don't see that.
Well, he doesn't want to coach in college, and he's itching to coach. Basically, he's itching to be around football.
So he's got but I don't see him being a fit for the NFL. He found that out the first time. That's why he left Miami, to come back to Alabama to begin with.
Just interesting to chew on.
I think that he would make an interesting general manager, like an evaluator of talent. Like I think that would be a better fit for Saban than coaching in the NFL.
Just crunch film all day, baby.
Yeah. But I agree with Andrew. The NFL is so attractive to coaches because, especially nowadays with everything going on in college football, with all the money and the transfer portal. I mean, that's why, like guys like Saban ultimately decided to retire, and other coaches, if they given the opportunity, they would much rather be in the NFL and just have to worry about coaching football year round than worry about all the other stuff, the academics and the recruiting and the, the transfer portal and, all those other things that come with it. So, yeah, another good point by Andrew. The Giants would be desperate.
That's what I mean. Dable's got like maybe one more year left in the cooker.
There's always going to be like look at the Jaguars going after Urban Meyer a few years ago.
There's someone always going to be desperate.
Mm-hmm. But again, I just don't see Nick Saban's style working well in the NFL in comparison to college. That's why I think especially at his age, just evaluate the talent.
Well, in college, you can be the control freak. You can control everything.
Exactly.
In the
players
NFL,
control everything. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep. All right, so we've talked about Clemson a bit this week. The Irish won't actually face them until 2027 when that series starts, but let's play our little game here. We're going to take a look at Clemson's schedule for the season and predict their over-under win total. Feeling confident on this one?
I am feeling confident on this one.
They start off against LSU. I mean, I think that is best case, a toss-up for both teams. It would be very fun if Brian Kelly were to lose a season opener for a fourth straight year. Then they take on Troy, Jared Parker, in week 2. Then they go to Georgia Tech, then Syracuse, at North Carolina, at Boston College, home against SMU, home against Duke, home against Florida State, at Louisville, home against Furman, at South Carolina. Not the most challenging schedule. I mean, besides LSU, like what's the next most challenging game for them? South Carolina at the end?
SMU could potentially provide some troubles.
Yeah.
I think maybe Syracuse. You never know what Florida State's going to be. I think Louisville is going to kind of have a drop off this season. Yeah, I mean, I think LSU. That Georgia Tech game might not be. I think Clemson wins it, but I still think it'll be a close game. Yeah, I mean, between just on paper, I think LSU, Georgia Tech, SMU, and South Carolina are kind of the toughest. I would set their win-loss at 10.5, but I believe it's going to be set at 9.5.
See, that's my gut says 10.5. I'm thinking the same thing when I look at this schedule.
You don't see a lot of those lines on FanDuel, like a lot of one-loss teams, and so
that's very high. Like you have to be Georgia, Alabama,
Ohio
those kind of schools, to get the 10.5.
So agree. I think it should be 10.5, but I think FanDuel is going to put it at 9.5.
All right, so you're going 9.5. That's what I'm going as well. My eyeball agreed with you. 10.5 is the eyeball, but I agree with that philosophy. That rationale that you're going with. So we're both going 9.5 as Clemson's over under. Correct?
That's correct.
Last chance to change. All right.
Final
Here we
answer.
go. Clemson's over under on FanDuel 9.5.
There it is.
Well
what are the? I bet it's probably like minus 160 though.
The over is plus 100. The under is minus 122.
Wow. So that they think that they're going to lose 3 games, actually, is what that's saying.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Isn't Cade Klubnik coming back for his 20th year?
He is.
I might have to parlay that with the Cowboys season over.
Yeah.
And
I think
the money.
I like the line 9.5. I would go over on 9.5 personally.
Yeah, at plus 100, I would take that.
Yeah.
Everyone in this show just got some free advice, baby.
Yep. So that's on FanDuel. If you can jump on FanDuel and get those plus 100 odds on Clemson's over at 9.5, I would jump on those because again, like even if you lose to LSU and South Carolina, which I don't think they'll lose both of those games, that maybe there's you're feeling pretty good. I think they won 10 games last year.
They'll probably split with those two, and then you're telling me they get 2 more mulligans outside of that? Come on, no way.
Exactly. So after more than a decade of experimentation with a 20-game men's basketball schedule, the ACC has decided to go back to an 18-game conference slate for the upcoming season and beyond. The move comes after the upper echelon teams in the ACC, like Duke, lobbied to cut the conference schedule to avoid playing deadweight teams that drag down their NCAA tournament resumes. So, Jesse, do you buy or sell this move by ACC men's basketball dropping from 20 conference games to 18 conference games?
I buy it with the caveat that those 2 games are filled with meaningful games. Don't schedule Furman out of conference or, South Dakota State or if you're going to say that, we're lobbying for this because it hurts our tournament resume at the end of the day, then add something that's going to boost your tournament resume.
Here's the irony of this. They want to get rid of 2 extra conference games because they're saying it's dragging their RPI or their power, whatever.
I call BS on that part, by the way.
You should call BS because the ACC had the worst non-conference winning percentage of the 5 major conferences last season.
So winning those conference games helped them get back afloat.
Yes. Even though they only had 4 teams make it to the tournament, the bottom line was they just didn't have enough good teams. They had Duke and a couple other good teams, and then North Carolina just got in. They only got 4 teams in the tournament last year. So
I think Andrew brings up a great point. It's not the ACC of the past. I think it's really top heavy. And so If you're some of those bottom teams, you would want to play more ACC games because it is going to, I think impact your schedule. And so again, I'm calling BS on the rationale, but if that's the rationale you're going to lose, then you need to schedule 2 tough non-conference games.
Exactly. They need to do better, and the only, again, the 4 of 18 teams that they got in is the lowest percentage of ACC teams to make it to the tournament since they expanded the field 40 years ago. So rough going for the ACC. You can drop it down, cut it out. I'm not exactly sure why they had 20 to begin with. Like the women's side has been doing 18. So the fact that the men were playing 2 more, I think it's
men's basketball,
weird to begin
college
with.
basketball is such a unicorn. They do everything wrong. They have 2 halves instead of quarters like every other version. Now, they don't have the same amount of conference games that the women do. It's just get on track with everyone else. Stop being your own entity where you got to do all these different things. Just fall in line with the rest of basketball. And this isn't even college. Like every other form at all levels plays a different version than what college men's hoops plays. And it's just baffling, Yeah,
I mean, honestly, like all of these, as good as the SEC was and as deep as the SEC was last season, like the teams that succeeded, they had a pretty good track record when it came to transfer portal guys, and I think that that's probably something that these ACC teams need to do a better job of is transfer portal. That would go a long way.
Agreed.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that Notre Dame's lone home and home opponent in the ACC will be Boston College.
It's lame. It's boring. It makes me want to go to sleep.
Who would it be if you could choose? Because I understand it's like, okay, you got the 2 Catholic schools in the league. That's part of the problem for Notre Dame in the ACC. Like on the women's side, you've got a natural rival in Louisville because both programs have been good, and like the series has been very heated over the years. But the men just don't have that same thing. Andrew says Miami, I'm sure that Notre Dame would take the trip to South Beach every year, like they wouldn't complain about that.
Mine would be Louisville. I think that's I'm all about regional, baby. You know that. I talked about it yesterday. I like those regional games, and I just think Notre Dame and Louisville always play good games. I always think of that 5 overtime game or whatever it was, a few years back. I know Louisville had a better season on the men's side. So I think when you're talking about kind of 2 programs who, maybe had a little bit of success 10, 15 years ago, and now, is kind of stumbling to get back on their feet. I just think that makes sense. I want something that's going to produce good basketball, right? Like I'm not in it because I want them to play Duke or North Carolina. Like I want a good matchup that's good for both sides. I think Louisville and Notre Dame are pretty evenly matched for where they are right now in terms of being basketball programs. And again, it's still pretty regional.
Honestly, I think Syracuse.
They always play really good games against Syracuse as well.
Syracuse or Pittsburgh, just in terms of, again, I get it. It's like they're pitting the 2 Catholic schools, Notre Dame and Boston College, against each other, and they're pairing them up, So, I don't know exactly how raucous Conti Forum is when Notre Dame gets out there. It's probably one of their better crowds. It typically is on the women's side anyway. But, like Notre Dame and Syracuse go back, to the Big East together. Obviously, Louisville and Notre Dame were in the Big East together as well, and Boston College was for a time. But it just, from a Notre Dame perspective, there just aren't that many natural fits. So, but like Boston College, just it doesn't do it for me. Honestly, I'd rather see them like revolve who Notre Dame's home and home is going to be rather than have it always be Notre Dame and Boston College every year. Because like even it I guess it makes sense because you've got Duke and North Carolina, so they've got to make sure that they're going to stay paired up and all that stuff. And I assume NC State and Wake Forest end up being paired up out there since it's only, you only get the one home and home, but it just doesn't Doesn't turn the dial for me very much. Fill in the blank. The Dallas Cowboys trading for Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver George Pickens means blank.
It means that Jerry and the gang are finally cooking a little bit. I don't know what Schottenheimer has been pouring into Jerry's soda in the morning or his coffee in the morning, but Jerry Jones has made these comments in the past. We're all in, and never comes of it, right? Well, they really had a really good job of re-signing some key players that they needed to get, under contract. They let a couple guys walk that I think that they didn't need to re-sign. They made a couple transactions before the draft to get some spots. I thought they drafted really well. And then the number one thing, Cowboys media, Cowboys reporters were just bashing them the whole draft. You got to draft wide receiver. Why are we not drafting a wide receiver? Jerry Jones is an idiot. And then, what do we have here? They had a really good draft, and then a week or two later, they bring in arguably one of the best wide receiver twos in all of NFL, right? And so on paper, it all looks good, but you still got to play the games and et cetera. But this is the best offseason I felt about the Dallas Cowboys in a pretty long time, to be honest with you. I don't know. I don't know if it's if again, Schottenheimer kind of, injected some juice into Jerry and finally got into his head here a little bit, but it feels like we're not going down this insanity path anymore of doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. It's nice to see Jerry and the gang get out of their shell here a little bit and make some moves. You're the Dallas Cowboys.
It's shocking. Like I was totally blown away when I heard that. I got up yesterday and my whole timeline was filled with it. And it almost felt like, am I waking up on April Fool's Day? Like what is going on right now? Because like you can talk about, well, they should have drafted a receiver and all this different stuff. Look, getting a guy, you have to give up a third round draft pick, and they swap some late round picks as well. But the bottom line is you've got a proven NFL receiver who you're going to pair up with one of the top 5 wide receivers in all of the NFL. And Pickens did his press conference today. You can't double cover both of them all the time. You got to have a safety. These are guys who are going to require a safety over both of them. You can't put a safety over both of them. I realize there are 2 safeties, but you can't do it all the time because there's only so many defenders to go around. It's just going to open so many things up. And you could have drafted a wide receiver, but you weren't going to get that, the kind of production proven. And the kind of that you're going to get out of a proven wide receiver.
He can step in and be a wide receiver too right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this makes Dak's life easier. This makes CeeDee Lamb's life easier. This makes their running game easier. Like everything gets easier when you add a wide receiver like this. So, and I read something too. George Pickens has the most receptions of balls 15 yards or more down the field. And Dak has some of the best accuracy and throws of 15 plus yards down the field. And you combine that with, like you said, who you going to double, right? You're going to put your resources to CD. Okay, Pickens is going to be open. You're going to put some resources towards Pickens. You can move CD into the slot and let him, I don't know. I'm just really excited about this. And that's why I sent you that screenshot of their over-under on the wins and losses. Like, there's no way they're not winning freaking more games than this.
Jumping over that 7.5 now. Sly Fox says Leon Lett on Thanksgiving priceless. Well, Leon Lett in the Super Bowl, you might call priceless as well, but they still won. So I'll take it. They still won the Super Bowls in both of those seasons. Andrew says he thinks the Schottenheimer hire is actually pretty decent. Great pedigree. His dad, Marty, and he learned under Pete Carroll. We said from the beginning, like the initial sort of sticker shock of hiring Marty Schottenheimer, it didn't jump off the page right away. But when you actually listen to the kind of things, that he's talking about, that he wants, the team and the offense to be, this is going back to those first few days when you heard his press conference. He wants to be, like Andrew's talking about Pete Carroll, he envisions the offense to an extent being what it was during Legion of Boom in Seattle, where it's just Marshawn Lynch and a physical offensive line, blowing you off the line. Now, obviously, you've got different receivers than what they had up there, especially now that you add Pickens. But he wants to be a physical team up front. And now the fact that you can protect the quarterback and you've got these kind of weapons, I think just adds another dimension to that.
He's adding discipline and filtering out the BS. They selected players, all guys who are captains, all guys who come with great, like you hear, like the guys that they drafted, you hear them talk about how they are as leaders, how they are as captains, and all that stuff. And I want you to bring up Mike's comment.
Well, because where is your documentation that he's a horrible, awful teammate, Mike? Because I've actually spent a lot of time watching, like NFL Network and ESPN the last 2 days, listening to them talking about him. And I've heard like Peter Schrager specifically on ESPN, he's had some, he's had some emotional outbursts like during games and on the sidelines. But from what, like everything that he's heard, like the guy Monday through Saturday, like that George Pickens is actually a really good teammate. Like they haven't had, any disturbances behind the scenes. It's like, again, like you've seen some outbursts on game day, but not stuff where like this is a guy who's dividing the locker room and that kind of stuff.
So here's where I'm at. Yes. Do you want to see him do better in terms of, the outbursts and all that stuff? Sure. But I view it more as kind of the fiery passion, kind of like the Des Bryant side of things, where you just get, and I've been in it too. Like you get so caught up in the heat of the moment and wanting to win and do well that you sometimes do some stupid stuff. And so I'm willing to give him a fresh start, knowing that he's coming into a better situation, because let's be honest, if I'm George Pickens and I'm the wide receiver one as the Steelers, why would I not be upset with the quarterbacks that they're rolling out there, the offensive coordinators that they've been rolling out there, the offensive schemes that they've been rolling out there? Like, it would not be fun to be a wide receiver one in the Steelers offense the last 4 years.
Yeah. Again, like I haven't heard them say, like he's saying, listen to anyone who covers the Steelers. I haven't heard them say bad teammate. That's not the kind of stuff that I've heard, but we'll see, because the other side of Jerry Jones is that he doesn't mind a little drama, like he likes the boost of adrenaline. Actually,
listen, if Greg Hardy could play on the Dallas Cowboys again, George Pickens was definitely getting a call from Jerry Jones.
Yep. Fill in the blank. The most surprising thing that's happened in the NBA playoffs is blank.
The Celtics collapse at home. 2 games collapsing in the fourth quarter at home. But if you want to put big picture on this thing, I just say that the home team struggles. Like,
that's like
OKC's the only team that has won a home game, and they did it last night finally.
After bouncing back from losing the first game and blowing a lead to Denver in the first game. Yeah, like big picture, just the fact that all the road teams won their first games. But like the biggest thing, well, 2 biggest things. One, Boston blowing 2 home games, 2 20-point leads into home games in their first 2 games of the series. And then when you look at the fact that Cleveland has lost both of their home games as well, and the way they lost that game the other day, you were telling me that didn't go over too well in your household. The Halliburton.
It did not go over well at all. It was really funny because I texted you. Naomi always gets so mad at me after like Cowboys and Notre Dame losses because you just get upset, especially the big ones like a national championship or the playoffs, and she'll go, "I don't know why you're being so dramatic. It's just a game. Why are you getting this upset?" The other night, good old Halliburton.
It was
4 points in the last 10 seconds of the game, and she's getting all hot and flustered. I'm like, now you know what it feels like after some of these Cowboys and Notre Dame losses. And it's not the same. Oh really?
Now you know. Now you know. Add a little expectation to your fire. Irish English just chiming in and says his 11-year-old son heard my voice and immediately asked, "Is that Brian Kelly?"
That's tough.
Dagger right here.
That's a tough one.
No kidding. Hit me hard. Hit me hard on that one. But like, the difference right now between the Celtics and the Knicks is the Knicks have a closer, like they've got a dude.
That's
who
what
can carry
everyone
them down the
talks
stretch.
about freaking Jalen Brunson, but he closed out the Pistons and he's been closing out the Celtics. You could say what you want, but the man is a competitor.
Yep. Salty's got a question for you.
Well, the bridal shower is this weekend, so.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, that's going to do it for today. Appreciate all the great we in, we out questions. Appreciate you being here today. It'll be an all rapid fire show mañana. So we've got that coming up. Jesse, good stuff as always. Everybody else, hit that like button before you leave, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.